"Beware the god of rot." That was all that was scrawled across the cracked, mold-ridden leather cover of the book. The stench was overwhelming. It was sour, putrid, and clinging to the back of my throat like vomit. I thought it was coming from the book at first, but it could have been anything in this house. The rotting food, the insects, the rats, the human waste. It was impossible to tell where one ended and the next began. Before I go any further, let me say this clearly: if you're squeamish, stop listening now. This isn't your run-of-the-mill internet ghost story or edgy creepypasta. This is something worse. Something real. What I'm about to describe may turn your stomach. You may start itching. The hair on your arms will stand up straight. And that's okay. That's expected. But don't say I didn't warn you. Let me back up. My name is Mary. I'm a social worker. That job title probably doesn't mean much to most people, but I guarantee if you've ever been at the edge of society, poor, disabled, addicted, or forgotten, we were probably the only people who showed up for you. First ones in, last ones out. We walk into the darkest corners of people's lives with nothing but ill-fated goodwill, hopeless optimism, and a clipboard. Most of the time it isn't enough, but we do our best. I've worked with abused children, neglected adults, and everyone in between. I started in child protective services. I guess I thought I owed it to the system. I grew up in foster care myself, bouncing from home to home, so maybe it was my way of giving back. But after 15 years, a painful divorce, and more than one run-in with substance abuse, I needed out. I switched my focus to elder care and never looked back. It's less dramatic than CPS. Most days anyway. I check in on isolated seniors, make sure they're eating, bathing, taking their meds. Sometimes I have to keep greedy family members in check. Sometimes I fail. But I do what I can. I love my clients, but I keep them at a distance, emotionally at least. That's the only way to survive this job. You keep work at work or it eats you alive. Of course, not every day is routine. You have your good days, your bad days, and then you have the days that leave you drained and broken on the inside. This was one of those days. It was bad. I just never thought it could get this bad. Gerald was one of my new clients. 72, wheelchair-bound, lives alone in a modest home at the edge of town. Quiet guy. Polite. Watched a lot of daytime TV. He'd contacted our agency asking for assistance with groceries, transportation, and some other general services. Nothing out of the ordinary. When I first met him, he was soft-spoken, kind, unremarkable in most ways. He didn't set off any red flags. No signs of advanced dementia, hoarding, or self-neglect. Just a lonely man trying to maintain a little independence. We spoke for a while. He smiled when I mentioned I used to do home visits for kids, said I had a kind face. I took my notes, told him we'd set up services and follow-ups, and left feeling like it would be an easy case. I got home, started my notes, and was halfway through setting up an aid referral when my phone rang. John. We'd grown up in the same foster group home, though our lives took very different paths. He went into law enforcement. I went into social work. Different tools, but ultimately the same goal: help people like us. It was ironic though. We tended to run into each other more at work than anywhere else. "Hey, St. Mary, what's going on?" he said with that same old smug sound in his voice. I rolled my eyes. "You know how much I love you calling me that, John?" "Yes, you've made that very clear," he said mockingly. "Shouldn't you be out arresting jaywalkers or ticketing kids with lemonade stands?" Damn, I was in the middle of busting a homeless guy for taking up space and forgot all about the lemonade stand. He laughed. We traded jokes for a few minutes like we always did, slipping back into that strange comfort only shared trauma can provide. But then his tone shifted. "You seen anything weird lately?" he asked, voice flat. I paused. "Weird like how?" "I don't know, just weird. Anything out of place. Strange calls. Odd behavior from clients. Stuff that feels off." "You're being cryptic," I said. "What's going on?" "Nothing I can talk about yet. We've had some strange reports lately. Isolated incidents, but enough to raise some flags. They're all clustered near your neck of the woods." I sat up straighter. "You think my clients are in danger?" "I'm saying keep your eyes open. If something doesn't sit right, trust your gut. Give me a call." "You serious right now?" I asked, trying to read between the lines in his voice. "Dead serious. Just be careful, Mary." "Okay." That stuck with me. John wasn't the paranoid type, and he never made vague warnings like that. Especially not about my rural patch of quiet, retiree-filled life. Whatever was going on, it had him rattled. 3 days later, it was time for Gerald's follow-up. I tried calling to confirm the visit, but he didn't answer. Not unusual. A lot of my clients just didn't bother with their phones. Sometimes it was better to drop by and see what's going on. I pulled into his driveway and stepped out of the car. And that's when the smell hit me. It was unlike anything I'd ever smelled before. I covered my nose and looked around. At first, I thought it might be a burst pipe, a sewage line broken somewhere in the neighborhood. But we lived in a rural area. Gerald most likely had a septic tank like most people around here. Any mystery about the smell disappeared the moment I approached the front door. It grew sharper, more potent. Each step closer made it worse. I knocked a few times and waited. "Gerald? You home?" No response. I decided it was best to leave. I'd write up documentation for the agency and let them follow up. I turned to go, but then I heard it, tapping at the door. I froze, then turned back. Was Gerald trying to open it? Was he stuck? Confused? I wasn't sure, but I didn't want to wait and find out. I turned the handle, and the door creaked open from the weight of something pressing against it from the inside. Then I saw what had made the sound. A flood of rats and insects spilled out. Dirty, mangy, squealing rats. I screamed and leapt onto a stone planter beside the entryway, heart racing, as the swarm scurried past me and disappeared into the yard. The smell hit me like a punch to the stomach. No matter how tightly I covered my face, it was inescapable. I could taste it. It burned my eyes. I yanked gloves, a mask, and eye covering from my bag. This wasn't my first rodeo. With this demographic, it is always a good idea to keep some sanitary measures on hand. I called John and told him we might need police on scene. My client could be injured, maybe worse. I peeked into the open doorway, but I could barely see. Blocking the entry was a wall of garbage piled several feet high. Trash, bags, boxes, all fused together into a towering heap. I hesitated. But if Gerald was inside, I couldn't afford to wait. I stepped into the mess. It looked like something out of Hoarders. But worse. Every inch of the floor was buried under waste. Not just clutter. Actual waste. Came up to my knees. As I pushed further in, it only got deeper. The carpet, if there was any, was gone, buried beneath mounds of human filth. Rotting food. Stained towels. Mold sprouting from the walls. A brown mist hung in the air, thick and foul. This place wasn't just dirty. It was diseased. Toxic. A rotting ecosystem. Then I heard it. A moan. Soft. Drawn out. Like someone in pain. "Gerald? Hold on, Gerald. I'm coming." My panic drowned the bile in my throat. I slogged through the slush, careful not to look down. A swarm of cockroaches burst from a box I stepped over. I reached the bathroom and screamed. Gerald was there, in the bathtub, only his head visible. The rest of him submerged in a thick, bubbling fluid. I won't describe it in full detail. Trust me, you don't want the image in your head. Just know it was a sickly color. Bones poked out of the slop, maybe chicken, maybe not. I couldn't tell. I didn't want to know either. Gerald lay there, writhing. His face was swollen with blisters. His skin a sickly green. He didn't look at me. Didn't open his eyes. He just moaned. That's when I realized he wasn't in pain. He was enjoying it. Leave me alone," he whispered. I watched in horror as a cockroach slipped out of his mouth and drowned in the pool of waste as he uttered the words. I couldn't take any more. I turned and bolted, back through the swamp of filth, out the door, into the cold air. I ripped off my mask and vomited in the bushes. Something terrible happened in that house. It's only been a few days. This wasn't just a mental health issue. This wasn't a nervous breakdown or accelerated dementia. Something put him there. Something changed him. John arrived shortly after. I stayed facing away from the house. I couldn't bear to look anymore. I didn't want to see them pull Gerald out. I still hoped he was alive, but I wasn't sure. John stood beside me quietly for a moment before asking, "You holding up okay?" I shook my head. "I don't know. I've never seen anything like that. Not in all my years." John glanced at the house, then back at me. "I told you there's weird stuff happening out here. It's not just Gerald. We've seen cases like this all over the county. Elderly mostly. A few kids too. What's going on, John? What could drive someone to live like that? To do that to themselves?" My voice cracked as I spoke. He hesitated. "There's not much I can say yet. We're hoping to release some details soon." I turned to him. "Cut the police bullshit, John. Come on. I care about these people." He looked down at his boots, the leather scuffed and dirty from his time in the house. For a long beat, he didn't say anything. "There've been reports," he said finally, "of missionaries in the area. At first we thought they were Mormon, harmless folks, but then we heard about what they're preaching. It's different, real different. Different how? John hesitated again. Beware the god of rot. That's what they're telling people. Some kind of apocalyptic, end-time stuff. Sounds like a cult. They've been leaving these books behind. Weird little handmade things, more of a manifesto than a holy book. We've found them in a couple homes already. I'm betting we'll find one here too. Can I see one? I asked. He shook his head. It's evidence. You shouldn't even know it exists. I stepped in closer. John? He sighed. Look, just be careful, okay? Take a few days. Get your head straight. I gave him a weak smile. You know I'm not going to do that. He shrugged. Didn't think you would. Can't blame a guy for trying. He gave my shoulder a gentle pat. All right, St. Mary. You need anything, you call me, yeah? I nodded. He walked back toward the crime scene, that robotic cop walk he always did when he was uneasy. I drove home with shaking hands. My skin crawled for hours. I couldn't stop scratching, my arms, my scalp, my legs. I knew there weren't bugs, but it felt like there were. Every passing itch made my hair stand up, every unexpected sensation made me shiver. I couldn't sleep that night. Couldn't stop thinking about the scene. The piles of garbage. The waste. The rats. I've seen plenty of horrors in my line of work, but this was different. This was evil. The kind of scene that wasn't a result of illness or poverty. It reeked of something deeper. Something purposeful. It wasn't just neglect. Not depression. Not a suicide attempt. It was like a ritual. A surrendering of humanity. A descent. A call to madness. A desire to become less. Less than human. Less than living. I stayed home the next few days. I followed John's advice. Technically I wasn't working, but I didn't rest. I couldn't. Not with what I'd seen. Not with what I'd heard. If this was spreading through the community, there's a chance it could harm someone else I know. I needed to learn more. Thankfully, I had connections. I put a call out to just about everyone I knew in my line of work. Friends, bosses, co-workers. They served every demographic you could imagine. Addicts, foster kids, the mentally ill. These people were real angels. The ones who kept society's most fragile from slipping through the cracks. They'd seen it all just like I had. But not this. I didn't want to scare them. I just wanted them to be aware, just in case. I had just wrapped up a call with Jeff, a good guy who worked for CPS. What do you mean weird? He asked. Well, I can't give details. Patient confidentiality. Just, if you come across anything that feels wrong, or if someone's living situation doesn't make sense, call me. Please. Sure, Mary. Thanks, I guess. Will do, he said, confused. I knew he'd dismiss it. Most of them would. Until it was staring them in the face. In the meantime, I bought more gear. A cheap hazmat suit, industrial-grade cleaner, long rubber boots. I had to burn everything I wore to Gerald's place. I didn't think I could ever get the stench out. And honestly, I didn't want to try. I did some digging online. But Google was useless. God of Rot turned up nothing. No obscure folklore, no Reddit thread, no low-budget horror movies. It was a ghost in the algorithm, which made it worse. If there really were people spreading this message, there should have been some kind of digital trail. But there was nothing. Just dead ends and conspiracy forums so poorly designed they looked like they hadn't been updated since the dawn of the internet. I was scrolling one of those sites when my phone rang. It was Jeff again. He sounded panicked. His voice was trembling and thick like he'd just thrown up. I didn't even let him finish, just got the address and drove like hell. It was only a few blocks from Gerald's house. I called John on the way. When I arrived, Jeff was sitting cross-legged on the curb with a little girl next to him. Her name was Alice. I forced a brave face as I stepped out of the car. Hey there, Jeff. Thanks for calling. I smiled gently at the girl. You must be Alice? Jeff had given me the backstory on the phone. Alice had recently been placed back with her parents after they got clean. They loved her, according to him. Genuinely. And he could usually tell. Social workers developed that radar early on, figuring out who's a deadbeat and who's just fighting a war most people can't see. Jeff thought they were fighters. Alice nodded shyly and went back to coloring in her notebook. Jeff sat beside her, legs folded tightly, a blank page in front of him. His hands trembled like dry leaves in the wind. He was trying to keep it together, but he wasn't fooling anyone. Hey Alice, I'm going to talk with Jeff for a second, okay? We'll just be right over there. She nodded again without looking up. I would have preferred privacy, but I couldn't take Jeff away from her. Not now. He was her safety net and I didn't want to traumatize her anymore. We stepped just a few feet away and turned our backs to her. I lowered my voice. John's on his way, I whispered, glancing over my shoulder. Alice was still coloring, her little hands steady and chipping away at a unicorn. "What is this, Mary?" he hissed, voice too loud. "What aren't you telling me?" I gave him a look and he took in a deep breath, trying to calm himself. "I can't find the parents." "And this isn't drugs," he said in a low voice. "It's something else. Something bad. Is it safe to go in?" "What? Yes, I think so. But why?" "I'll be right back," I said quickly and turned before he could stop me. "Jeff's not going anywhere, all right, Alice? I'm just going to peek inside." The first few rooms were normal, lived in. A little messy, some toys on the floor, dishes in the sink. Nothing unusual, but the smell. It wasn't nearly as overpowering as Gerald's place, but it was familiar. I pulled out my mask, gloves, and rubber boots from my bag and geared up. Then I climbed the stairs. Each step made the smell worse. It clung to the walls. Offensive, rotting, and putrid. By the time I reached the top, my eyes were already stinging behind my goggles. Then I saw the bedroom door, slightly ajar. I pushed it open, and froze. The room looked like Gerald's, only more purposeful. More elaborate. The floor was a swamp of soggy boxes, decomposing food containers, soiled clothes. Fluids, green and brown, were smeared across the carpet, the walls, the ceiling. Human waste, painted words in jagged, frenzied strokes. Useless. Dissolve and rot. Deserve it. I pressed a hand to my chest, trying not to gag inside the mask. According to Jeff, the parents had locked themselves inside for at least 24 hours. Alice tried knocking, but nobody answered. Thankfully, Jeff was scheduled for a visit the next day. That is when she told him what was happening. He was the first to force the door open. There were no bodies. No one in the tub. No one buried beneath the rot. Just absence. And then I saw it. A book. Sitting innocently on the nightstand next to a rotting frozen dinner. It was large, leather-bound, its corners frayed and curling with age. The pages were yellowed, some of them warped from moisture. And carved crudely across the front in jagged letters stood a warning. Beware the god of rot. I didn't open it. I slipped it into a plastic Ziploc, sealed it, and shoved it deep into my backpack with gloved hands. That's when I heard sirens. I scrambled downstairs, shoved my gear into a trash bag, stuffed it into the backpack, and stepped out the front door just as the first squad car pulled into the driveway. John was on the scene again. I told him the truth, well, part of it. I explained that Jeff was an old friend and I had warned him strange things were going on in our neighborhood. He gave me a call when he came across something he couldn't explain. I didn't mention the book. That part one kept to myself. I told him when I arrived at the scene, it was exactly like Gerald's. The same reeking mess, the same stomach-turning piles of waste and rot. Except this time the clients were missing. I didn't find Alice's parents. No bodies. No sign of anyone in the room. I asked how Gerald was doing. "He's stable," John said. "Recovering at a nearby hospital." I nodded, letting the silence stretch. Then John asked, "Was he always odd?" "Odd how?" I looked at him, confused. He gave a shrug like he wasn't sure how to put it. "I don't know. Just off." "No," I said more firmly than I meant to. "He was a sweet man. Seemed very well adjusted." "Why?" He shook his head. "Nothing. Forget it. The investigator will probably reach out soon. Might want to ask you a few questions." We said our goodbyes and I started home. I didn't turn the TV on. Didn't check my work phone or email. I sat alone with the book in front of me, lying on the kitchen table like a bomb waiting to go off. The cover, ominous and foreboding, staring me in the face. "Beware the god of rot," was strange. My first instinct had been to crack it open, to read it. To try and understand what could drive people to live like that, to become like that. But something stopped me. The longer I stared at the book, the heavier I felt. It wasn't just dread, it was decay. Like something inside me was decomposing. My self-worth crumbled at the edges. Not suicidal exactly, but something darker than that. Thoughts drifted in like spores. Whispered urges. I didn't want to die, not really. I wanted to feel pain, disgust, degradation. Images slipped into my mind like maggots. Insects crawling beneath my skin. Fungus blooming across my arms. My body rotting slowly, feeding the world. It was satisfying in a way I can't explain. I snapped out of it with a gasp and shoved the book back into my backpack, zipping it tight like it was leaking poisonous gas throughout my home with every passing moment. Later that night, I called John. I needed to know if Alice's parents were found and if they were still alive. To my surprise, he said they were still missing. It didn't make sense. No sign they'd left the property, but no bodies either, which was concerning. After we hung up, I sat in silence. Something else was eating at me. The thought of Alice. It had been a long time since I really looked back. My own childhood had been a blur of group homes, failed placements, and distant foster parents. My birth parents had overdosed when I was still in diapers. This whole situation, it was stirring things up. Things I thought I'd buried. Alice had a chance at something better. Her parents had come back for her. They loved her. And now something sick had taken them away. If she doesn't get them back, she'll end up back in the system. Just like me. I couldn't just let that happen. I wouldn't. This might be the most important thing I ever did for someone. I just needed to understand what was happening. And I needed to find them before it was too late. I decided to visit Gerald. There was only one major hospital nearby. I figured he had to be there. He could tell me more about the god of rot, why he did what he did, maybe even how to stop it. Night was falling fast. A storm had rolled in heavy and loud. Wind battered the streets and rain came down in sheets, making it hard to drive. But the hospital was close, so I took the risk. Inside the main entrance, I gave Gerald's last name to the woman at the front desk. She looked me up and down. I flashed the agency badge and said I was his social worker. She frowned, tapping at her keyboard. The agency never called, she said. But I'm in your system, right? I've been here many times. After a short back and forth, she finally relented. Room 412. I found the room, knocked once, and entered. What I saw nearly stopped me in my tracks. Gerald wasn't the same man I visited just a week ago. He was propped up in bed, hooked to machines that beeped and hummed. He looked like he'd lost 40 pounds. His face was wrapped in bandages. His skin was covered in blisters and dried blood. What little was visible looked stretched thin, pale and raw. But his eyes, they were so hollow. It was like the sweet old man behind them had given up. Then I noticed his hands. He was scratching. Not a nervous itch, no. He was clawing at his arms like he was trying to dig something out. There was dried blood around the area. Like this was a constant cycle. Gerald scratches himself raw, a nurse patches him up, then he tears away the bandage. Rinse and repeat. I winced at the thought. Hi Gerald, I said carefully, stepping into the room. You doing okay? Ugh, he grunted, not looking at me. Who are you? He didn't recognize my voice. Didn't even glance in my direction. His fingers kept working, digging, cutting. I cut to the chase. I need your help, Gerald. The god of rot. What is it? He paused, just for a second, then looked at me like I hadn't said a word. He mumbled something too soft to hear. A child's parents were given the same book you had. I need to find them. Gerald waved me off and kept scratching. You got anything sharp in that bag of yours? He asked, voice dry. I'm so itchy. I took a deep breath. I needed him to hear me. Really hear me. But I needed him to snap out of his trance. Gerald, I know you're lonely. He stopped scratching. The words cut through to him more than his fingers managed to. I took a step closer. And I know this thing, it feeds on that. It makes you think you're worthless. Like you deserve to rot. Like you deserve to be forgotten. But that's not true. He shifted in his bed and looked down at his bloody palms. I stepped closer and gently put a hand on his bandaged shoulder. I do this job because I care about people like you. You're not worthless, Gerald. You're loved. And you deserve better than this. His face didn't change much, but a tear welled at the corner of one eye. He blinked it away. I'm not going to bug you anymore, okay? You get better. And when you're back home, I'll be there to get your services started again. If you need to talk, just call. Anytime. I turned and walked toward the door. This job is hard. But people like Gerald, that's why I do it. I knew no one else had visited him in this place. I just needed him to know he mattered. That someone saw him. That he wasn't alone. That kid, Gerald said behind me. What's her name? I turned. Alice. Sweet girl. Her parents are just lost. But they love her. He nodded slowly. His eyes glazed over like he was reliving something. When you found me, I was in the tub. But I didn't start there. I tried to crawl into my septic tank. I don't know why, but that is the first thing I thought of. That's where I was supposed to go. But I was too weak to make the trip. He looked away, ashamed. Like the weight of it was only now becoming real. A chill slid down my back. Thank you, Gerald, I said softly. I'll be back. Okay. I drove as fast as I could to Alice's house. The storm was at its peak now. Rain slammed against my windshield in sheets, and flashes of lightning split the sky in bursts of white. The roads were flooding, tires slicing through pools of water as thunder cracked above me. I called John on the way. I think they're in the septic tank, I said breathlessly. That is why you couldn't find them. I don't know if they're still alive, but I need your help. Oh my God, John said, stunned. Are you sure? No, I said, squinting to see through the storm. But I have a hunch. We're on our way. I parked in front of Alice's home and ran around to the back, boots splashing through the soaked grass. I knew where the septic tank access would be. Somewhere behind the house. Somewhere someone desperate could crawl into. Then I saw it, a patch of dirt too loose, recently disturbed. The rain had nearly erased the evidence, smoothing it over. But it was still there. I dropped to my knees and pried open the hatch. The stench hit me like a slap in the face. Thankfully, the storm carried the scent away swiftly. I gagged, instinctively pulling my shirt over my nose. Hello? I screamed, barely able to hear my own voice over the storm. No response, at least none I could hear clearly. I shined my flashlight down into the tank. It was bigger than I expected. The size of a bedroom. Half filled with thick, sludgy waste. Black water rippled under the beam of light. And then I saw it, movement at the far end of the tank. Hey, are you there? Nothing. Damn it, I'm coming in, okay? This was the worst thing I had ever done. But I couldn't turn away. Not if there was a chance to bring them back. Just like Gerald. They needed to know Alice loved them. That they weren't failures. They were worthy. I sprinted back to the car and grabbed the cheap hazmat suit I kept in the trunk. It wasn't much, just a plastic barrier, but it was better than nothing. I pulled it on, strapping a headlamp around my forehead before slipping the hood over. I ran back to the hatch. The flashlight slipped from my fingers and dropped into the tank with a soft plop. It floated on the surface, casting dim, oily light across the waist. I lowered myself down the metal rungs inside the hatch. The moment my feet hit the bottom, I felt it, the thick, revolting slosh of waste up to my waist. The sensation turned my stomach. I picked up the floating flashlight and swept it across the space. Hello? I called again, my voice trembling. I waded slowly forward, scanning the shadows until... a voice. So soft I almost missed it. Alice? I turned the light toward the sound and saw them. Both of them. Alice's parents. Sitting upright in the muck. No suits. No masks. Just skin and bones soaked in filth. Their eyes were shut. Their mouths slack. Alive but gone. Like Gerald. Lost in some trance. I slogged toward them, fighting the thick liquid with every step. I reached out and grabbed them by their arms, trying to pull them toward the exit. Come on, I pleaded. You need to get out. I can't carry you both. But they resisted. Limp, unresponsive. I didn't have much time. The storm was pouring water into the tank rapidly. Soon enough we'd all be drowning in waste and rainwater before anyone could rescue us. Then I heard a sound behind me. A bubbling, hissing sound, wet and unnatural. I turned around, heart thudding in my head. At first I thought it was the fumes. Hallucinations maybe. But I saw something. A shape. A spine. Exposed bone rising from the waist, long and jagged like the fin of a shark. It slipped beneath the surface like a serpent hiding in the grass. Hello? I called, my voice breaking. Is someone else there? Silence. I was about to turn back to the couple, when a splash erupted in front of me, drenching my hood and face shield. My vision went black. Damn it. I screamed, panic surging. I couldn't see. I couldn't move. Despite everything in me screaming not to, I pulled off the hood. The smell hit me like a fist. Raw, chemical, fecal. I vomited immediately, doubling over in the rising waste. When I looked up again, it was there. A tall, bloated figure rose before me. Bubbling skin, raw and festering. Bone and sinew exposed like sticks in the mud. Its face looked like a horse's skull, white and long. Mushrooms and mold sprouted from its head like grotesque antlers. Fluids, red, green, yellow, dripped from its gaping maw. The god of rot. And with it came the feeling. That same hopelessness. A wave of it. A blanket of grief and self-loathing crashing down. I remembered everything. The system. The hunger. The nights I cried myself to sleep in strange beds. The belief I was unwanted. Trash. A burden. I wanted to take off the suit. I wanted to lie down in the filth. Let the mold take me. Let the rot erase me. But no. No. I gritted my teeth. I was worthy. Gerald was worthy. Alice's parents were worthy. We all had value. This thing wasn't going to break me. I'm older and wiser now than when I was that poor sad child. And these people needed me. I turned away from the creature. Focused on them. Hey, I said, voice shaking. Hey, I met Alice. She's a sweet girl. No response. She loves you both. She knows you're trying. The mother whimpered. The father turned his face, ashamed. "I lost my parents to drugs a long time ago," I said, tears running down my face. "They weren't like you. They didn't fight." My voice broke. A sob escaped my throat. I kept going. "You are worthy of Alice, okay? You just need to come out of here. Can you do that for me? For Alice?" I heard the creature roar behind me. An angry, guttural sound. And something broke. They blinked. Slowly they turned toward me. Still weak. Still sluggish. But alive. And aware. They started moving. I grabbed their arms and pulled, step by painful step, toward the hatch. I didn't look back. I didn't care what was behind me. It couldn't hurt us now. The storm was worse now. The liquid in the tank was rising, chest deep and still climbing. We were almost there. The creature was nowhere to be found. I let out a sigh of relief. Then I felt it. A hand on my shoulder. I jumped and spun around. John. He was in the tank with me, face pale, eyes wide. He looked like he was about to pass out. "Hand one of them to me," he shouted over the roar of the storm. I grabbed the mother's wrist and pushed it toward him. We worked together, dragging the parents across the sludge toward the exit. People were gathered around the opening now. Paramedics, police, firemen. Hands reached down, pulling them out of the tank one by one. Then it was our turn. John and me. Time to leave the filth behind. The rot. The self-degradation. The trauma. Just like when we were kids. We gave each other a quiet, reassuring nod and started climbing the rungs. One after the other. Away from the god of rot. And into the storm above. Alice's parents made a full recovery. Thank God we found them when we did. The doctor said they were only hours from death. They couldn't latch the tank properly from the inside, and water had started to rise. If we'd waited any longer, they would have drowned. John managed to track down the rest of the books. There was a press release and people turned them in willingly and swiftly. The missionaries were never found. Just gone, like they never arrived at all. Now government agencies are involved. I guess it wasn't an isolated incident after all. I visit Gerald and Alice often. They're doing much better. And so am I. Sure, I still think about it. The god of rot. I don't know exactly what I saw in that tank. A hallucination brought on by chemical waste most likely. But the idea of this monster is real. It's predatory. And very successful. We're all broken in our own way. We all get lonely. Feel worthless. Like waste, something to be discarded or used. But if you ever find yourself in that place, I hope you reach out. To a social worker. A therapist. A friend. Someone who will listen. Someone you trust. Because you are loved. You are deserving. No matter what the voice in your head tells you. No matter what anyone else has said. If you can hold on to that idea, even just for a moment, there's still hope. You can crawl back. Out of the waste. Out of the garbage the world tries to drown you in. Towards something better. Towards hope. Just don't forget. Beware the god of rot.
If you love horror stories, like and subscribe. I post new stories at least twice a week.